بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم اجعل اجتماعنا هذا اجتماعا مرحوما واجعل تفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما. اللهم لا تجعل فينا ولا بيننا ولا منا شقيا ولا محروما برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Let me start inshallah with a hadith where Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said or used to say in his dua of salah, Allahumma laka alhamdu mil as-sama'i wa mil al-ard wa mil ma shi'ta min shay'in ba'd. Allahumma tahhirni bil-thalji wal-baradi wal-ma'i al-barid. Allahumma tahhirni min al-dhunubi wal-khataya kama yunaqqa ath-thawbu al-abyadu min al-wasakh aw min ad-danas. So one of the dua that he sallallahu used to say before he starts Surah Al-Fatiha, Allahumma lakal hamd, O Allah, to you all the praise goes, mil as-sama'i wa mil al-ard, to fill up the heavens and earth, wa mil ma shi'ta min shay'in ba'd, and to fill up anything that you like, O Allah. Allahumma tahhirni bil-thalji wal-baradi wal-ma'i al-barid. O Allah, purify me with the snow, with the hails, with the cold water. Allahumma tahhirni min al-dhunub. O Allah, purify me from all the sins. Kama yunaqqa ath-thawbu al-abyadu min al-wasakh, the way that you purify the white thobe from any dirt. Now this was a hadith that he ﷺ used to say, or dua that he used to say in his prayer. And as you can see, there is طهرني من الذنوب والخطايا كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس. Oh Allah, purify me from the sins the way that a white thobe will be purified from the dirt. The reason I'm starting with this is to say that Tahara has two meanings. Tahara for what we call it Tahara حسية and Tahara معنوية. Tahara حسية is something is the Tahara that we usually refer to as for the prayer, and that is the Tahara of your body, like your physical body. Whereas Tahara معنوية is more of a virtual one, is more of like your inner side is tahir or purified from the ill feeling, from any discrepancy in your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in any of those bad things that a person may have in their hearts, right? So the believer has fulfilled the requirement for tahara in both ways, on the outside and in the inside. So the believer is always purified in both ways. And that's why we hear those ahadith about at-tahuru shatrul iman, that at-tahur, which is like the physical tahara, is half of iman. So what's the other half? Is the tahara inside. So if you make tahara outside and inside, it means mashallah you are perfect, and that's what makes you a believer. The same way Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as Abu Huraira narrated, and this is in Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim, Abu Huraira said that one day I was in the marketplace when I saw Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I had janaba. Janaba means that he, we know janaba, what it means. So he had janaba and he did not wash his body after it, right? He did not take the tahara after it. So he felt very shy meeting with Rasulullah ﷺ when he had janaba, right? By the way, when someone has janaba, the person cannot recite Quran, you know that, right? Until they wash themselves. This is a big ruling. We will take that inshallah later. But Abu Hurairah said, it seems that apparently he had janaba, he couldn't take the tahara of it or ghusl, so it seems that he did need to get something from the marketplace. When he saw Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was like, oh, I cannot see him with this state, it doesn't befit the right of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam on us to be always in the best shape to meet with him. So he said, فَخَنَسْتُ. خَنَسْتُ means that I disappeared. I tried to disappear. I said, Assalamu alaikum, disappeared. So he went to wash his body, and he came back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he sallallahu alaihi wasallam has asked him, Ya Abu Hurairah, what happened to you? How come you were there and then all of a sudden you disappeared? He said, Ya Rasulullah, I met with you with janaba, and then I went to do tahara and ghusl, and I came back. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, Subhanallah, inna al-muslima aw al-mu'min la yanjas. He said, all glory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Verily the believer would never be najis. Would never be najis. And this najasa is what? Not the physical body najasa, it's more the inner najasa. So in other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran about the disbelievers in Surah At-Tawbah, إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ najas. إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ, that verily those who associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are najas. They have najasa. But that najasa is not physical. It's only the type of belief they have is najas, but not their physical body. And the evidence of that was that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to shake hands with them, and he would never wash his body. So it means that their physical body is fine, it's tahir, but it's only that insight. And that's why when we talk about tahara, we talk about those two places, or two types of tahara. Tahara al-hissiyya, which is like your physical body is tahara, and tahara al-ma'nawiyya, which means your inner tahara. Okay, in those sessions, inshallah, I would really be very happy if you have any question that you may stop me and ask, inshallah. So feel free to stop me at any point in time and say your question or ask whatever you want. Anything so far? Okay. Okay, so here is what I would like to conduct these sessions. Those sessions about fiqh, and inshallah the plan is to do them throughout the summer, perhaps until August, maybe mid of August or early August, and then give you some time to break. The purpose of this is not to teach you one type of fiqh, right? It's not about, for example, promoting fiqh al-Shafi'i or fiqh al-Hanbali or fiqh al-Hanafi or fiqh al-Maliki. No, it's more about living with our fuqaha about the matters of fiqh, and see what we can learn from that, so that our life could be changed accordingly. In other way, could someone live his life without worrying about the madhab? Well, we tell you always need to ask the people of knowledge, but you don't have to ask them, okay, I want this specific exact madhab. In other words, as we always know, that Sahaba radiallahu anhum wa ardahum came before the madhab, right? And they were the best people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created after the prophets and messengers. So they lived their lives relying on asking the people of knowledge. The ulama, the four imams, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, they did actually put the roots and foundations of some methodology in how to derive rulings in Sharia from Quran and Sunnah. They did not create their own rulings. They did not do that. What they did, in fact, they all agreed on one thing. They said, we will be getting our rulings from Quran and Sunnah and what has been agreed upon between our Sahaba. And then they said, but there are so many different new events and new rulings that none of the Sahaba has talked about. So we have to have a methodology to derive rulings. And that methodology is what they have created. Like the Imam Abu Hanifa has his own way of doing it. Imam Shafi'i has a different way, and so on. But what they have agreed upon is way more than just that methodology. And people ask about this, and I can give you a few examples just so that you understand what it means. Like for example, in the madhab of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, they say that if we don't have a Quran or Sunnah statement about some ruling, but we have one Sahabi, just a single Sahabi, who said a ruling about that one thing, then according to Imam Ahmad, he said that because there was one Sahabi saying it, then that becomes the ruling, and we cannot do something else. So in other words, he said that the statement of one Sahabi is strong enough to make it a mandatory thing on us to follow. But the other ulama, like Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, he said no, it can't be, because that Sahabi did an ijtihad, and the ijtihad could go right or wrong, right? Imam Abu Hanifa respects all the Sahaba, just like anyone else, but he said, no, we can't just say if a Sahabi says something, then we just take it as is. We need to verify more, because the thing that really doesn't change is the Quran and Sunnah, but the opinions of Sahaba could go wrong. They are human beings after all. Of course, he would always give a preference to the statements of Sahaba over others, but still he will not just take it as is and never think about it. So this is like this is different. This actually gives you like a different methodology. Another thing is, did you hear about the word qiyas? Qiyas means that, okay, well, if I look at certain ruling, like I'll give you one example. We know that khamr, drinking wine, is haram, right? Okay, so what is the ruling about taking drug, like the heroin or cocaine or those things? What is the ruling? It was never said in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No one knew about it. So there is something called qiyas. And qiyas means that, okay, if anything that makes you intoxicated is haram, and anything that makes you ill or sick or weak is haram, and all of these have been reported in another hadith, then definitely taking drug will be also haram, because that also causes you to go through all these. Like you will become ill, you will become sick, you will become addicted, and all that stuff. So that's called qiyas. I'm actually seeing something that we have an evidence, something that we don't have an evidence, and I see some strong similarities between the two, so I make the ruling of the two the same. That's called qiyas. Some of the ulama have said we do qiyas, and others said no, we don't do qiyas. We make something called al-istihsan or al-istishab, which is another way to derive rulings about something that no one has said, that no ayah or hadith was mentioned about them. So you see the point? That's why the methodology of these ulama have played a big factor of getting fiqh in different shapes, and getting fatwa in different shapes, especially on the things that there is no ayah or hadith about them. And by the way, just to tell you one thing, the two scholars out of the four who have really started like a full school of fiqh are Abu Hanifa and Shafi'i. In fact, if you go to a knowledge called usul al-fiqh. Usul al-fiqh means that it's an area or branch of knowledge that is focused about how we can derive new rulings from Quran and Sunnah. That's what usul al-fiqh means. And the two ulama who have really established this were Imam Abu Hanifa first, and then Imam al-Shafi'i. And Imam al-Shafi'i radiallahu anhu arda was very close to Imam Malik and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So the three of them really followed the same type of a school, but yet there were some differences even in their own methodologies, and that's where we have like three opinions. But in fact, when we talk about usul al-fiqh, we talk about the opinions of the Hanafi and the opinion of what we call it al-jumhur. And jumhur means the three other madahib, the Maliki, the Shafi'i, and Ahmad bin Hanbal. Both of these ways or different approaches to get fiqh, both of them have been reported that they were practiced by the Sahaba. So the Imam Abu Hanifa didn't come of something on his own, and Imam Shafi'i didn't do the same. Similarly, they both have actually relied on incidents and events that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum had to take an opinion on something, and they said, well, we have an evidence they did that, and they established more of a consistent methodology throughout the whole spectrum of fiqh. That's what those imams have done. And subhanAllah, those imams have actually made a big statement for us for all their followers. So for example, they actually forbade anyone to just copy them as is. They said, before you copy us, before you follow us, you have to understand, or you have to ask for like how we made our judgment. Like what dalil and what ahadith, or what was the evidence that you have used in order to say that the ruling of this is this or that. And that was the same exact statement that came from Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, and Ahmad bin Hanbal. They all said that we are reliant on the Quran and Sunnah, and we cannot go beyond them. It's just the way that they thought about it. And in fact, they all said similar statements about, if you ever at any point in time find out that there is a closer ruling to the Quran and Sunnah than what we have said, then throw our statements on the wall and just follow the Quran and Sunnah. That was stated by Abu Hanifa. That was stated by Malik, Shafi, and Ahmad bin Hanbal. Now, when you hear this, some people unfortunately misunderstand it, and they say, okay, if they have said this, then let me go to the books of fiqh, of hadith and Quran, and I can make the ruling just like Abu Hanifa. Well, you can't do that. You have to have the same amount of knowledge and experience like any of their students first, in order to say that. And subhanAllah, if you think about it, just to give you an example, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, who was the last Imam, the last of the four, it was narrated that Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal have memorized more than 1 million hadith. Can you imagine? You know his book, Musnad al-Imam Ahmad, he has chosen it from over 1 million hadith. And the Musnad of Imam Ahmad has in it over 11,000 hadith. That was all in his memory. So when you say, we hear it nowadays, unfortunately, and I want to stay away from labels and all that stuff, and talking about Islamic parties. Let's stay away from that, but let's just mention what wrong could happen. Like there are some who may appear as students of knowledge, who say, okay, Abu Hanifa was a man and I am a man. Well, maybe yes in terms of being masculine, but there's nothing, you can't compare yourself to the grand students of Abu Hanifa, let alone his students, let alone himself. There's no way anyone nowadays who can claim that they can give something comparable to any of those four imams. That doesn't necessarily mean that the ijtihad is closed and they cannot come up with something new. Well, no, because many things that we see nowadays never even happened in the time of those four imams. Like I give you example, there were few Muslims who went to on the rockets, to explore astronomy. Explore space, and they were asking about how would they pray, how would they make wudu, how would they go to the bath and all that stuff. And those are all new things. Like now we talk about this meat that they implant, right? Did you hear about this? There's a new meat that they do it at the lab, not real meat. I'm sure everyone heard about it. So what's the ruling of it? There are many things that are coming these days, new money transactions, new way of eating food and all that stuff. And of course, they require a lot of ijtihad. So the door of ijtihad is already open. But if we talk about things that are very trivial, very common, like for example, what is the ruling of raising the hands during salah? Well, nothing has changed since the time of Rasulullah ﷺ. We can't expect someone to come now and say, okay, Abu Hanifa was wrong, Shafi'i was wrong, Malik and Ahmad Muhammad were not correct, and here is the right thing. No, we can't expect that. We can't accept it in the first place, because those things would never change, right? So when we talk about the fiqh in today's time, what we really expect from our ulama and our scholars is to link us to the source, link us to the big imams, like of four imams and the sahaba and the tabi'een, so that we understand where they came from and what makes us really do things in a way that is closer to what Rasulullah wanted us to have. When it comes to something very new, something that never happened, yes, we have our scholars who have to make their own ijtihad and their own rulings.
If someone dreams like a touch woman or something, but money didn't come out, is it the ruling? What is the ruling?
Okay, so I think you started to ask about things that we will cover later. Yeah, I wanted to ask questions about what we are talking about now, which is why the ulama have difference of opinions and what made them have different rulings. But anyways,
we're going to come back about Tahara.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Inshallah. Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Why is it called Abu Hanifa, Imam Abu Hanifa and others are Jumhur? Why is that?
Jumhur means the vast majority.
Right, so all three of them, right?
Yes.
So what is the reason for?
The reason is because usul al-fiqh in the Hanafi school of thought was built differently than the ones that Imam Shafi'i did, which was also adopted by Malik and Ahmad Muhammad. So the Malikiyya, the school of Maliki and the school of Hanbali have adopted the same usul al-fiqh that was created by Imam Shafi'i. So, I mean, yes, there are differences, but minor differences. The major differences are between what Abu Hanifa has created and what Shafi'i has created. So when we say al-jumhur, only when we talk about usul al-fiqh, we mean Malik, Shafi'i, and Ahmad Muhammad. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Just to clearly, just the same question. Can you be more specific now about where the difference lies, or you want to tell us more about the differences between Abu Hanifa and
No. So the differences I will touch some of them right now, but I want to say that the difference between the imams in terms of fiqh is one thing, and the difference between them in usul al-fiqh is a totally different thing. When I said jumhur here, I was talking about usul al-fiqh, which is how to derive rulings. But fiqh is what are the rulings themselves. So inshallah, I want to just now mention some of the things that actually have made the ulama to disagree, right? So we talked about methodology, different methodology. Another one is actually like how the dalil came to them, like how the hadith of Rasulullah SAW came to our imams. And I can tell you about things that have happened in the past, like Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Now this is Abu Bakr, much better than any of those four imams. Abu Bakr was asked once about the inheritance for the grandmother. If someone passes away and his father is already passed away, but he has his grandmother from the father's side, does she inherit from him? So when Abu Bakr heard this, he said, I don't know that she inherits. But then he said, I didn't either hear it from Rasulullah SAW, so let me ask first. He was the Khalifa, and he was the most honorable person after Rasulullah SAW. So he went to ask some of the Sahaba, and one of them was Mughira ibn Shu'bah and Muhammad ibn Salama. So he asked them, and Mughira ibn Shu'bah has told Abu Bakr, I heard Rasulullah SAW giving the grandmother from the father's side 1/6, 1/6 of the inheritance. So that was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Another incident happened to Umar. Umar radiallahu anhu was at his home, and Abu Musa al-Ash'ari came to Umar to ask him a question. So he knocked on his door, and Umar radiallahu anhu was busy, so he did not answer. So Abu Musa al-Ash'ari knocked the second time, and then the third time, and yet Umar is not getting out. And then Abu Musa al-Ash'ari left. Umar opened the door, and he was like, where is he? And you know, Umar was Umar. Like he was very strong. So he was told that it was Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, so he went after him. So when he found Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he said, how come you left the place? I was just busy. He said, because I heard Rasulullah ﷺ saying, al-istidhanu thalathan fa'in udhina laka wa illa farja, that when someone takes permission to in front of another person's house, he should do it 3 times, and after the 3rd time, if he doesn't get the permission, he should leave, right? He said, I never heard this from Rasulullah. And Umar was so strong, and he was very strict. He was like, are you making this up to justify what you did? He said, no, wallahi, I know. He said, okay, I want a witness, another witness. So he went to another group of people, and they found Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, and he said, I heard the same from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that was Umar ibn al-Khattab. The same thing happened to Uthman, the same thing happened to Ali ibn Abi Talib in different occasions. So just to say that sometimes even big names like those Sahaba and the 4 Imams, even them, they might be missing some of the ahadith that they did not hear. The second one is actually, if sometimes the ahadith themselves could show conflict. Like they may appear with some conflict. Like for example, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said about the cupping, hijama, cupping. He said, "Aftar al-hajim wal-mahjum," that the one who does cupping and the one who cupping is done for him, both of them will actually break their fast if they were fasting. In another hadith, both of them are authentic. Rasul the other hadith says, "احتجم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو صائم," that he sallallahu has cupping done for him while he was fasting, and he didn't break his fast. So how could you make these two working together, right? And the ulama have difference of opinion about this. Like some of them said that one came after the other, so it cancelled it. Others have said, well, this was specific to Rasulullah ﷺ, whereas the other one is not, and so on. A third one, or another example, if someone touches his private area, right? Does that actually nullify his wudu? Rasulullah ﷺ was asked about this. If someone touches his private area, and he ﷺ said, it is part of his body. right? إِنَّمَا هُوَ بُضْعَةٌ مِّنْهُ. But in another authentic hadith, he said, مَنْ مَسَّ ذَكَرَهُ فَلْيَتَوَضَّأْ. Whoever touches his private part, then let him make wudu. So the hadith are correct and authentic, but they are conflicting in the result, in the ruling. And the ulama have actually also difference of opinion about what it means and how they can reconcile between the two. Like some of them have said that touching that private part is going to nullify someone's wudu if it happens with shahwa, like with some lust, like someone is doing it even deliberately. Then that actually nullifies someone's wudu. But if it happens accidentally, then it doesn't. So this is like one of reconciliation that was mentioned. And so on and so forth. And that actually tells us like the different way of thinking of those ulama. Some of them have said, no, the one that is more authentic, which is which was reported in Sahih Bukhari, it should be the ruling. Whereas the other one, even though it is Sahih, but it is less authentic because it was in a book other than Bukhari. The same, others have said, well, one came in the earlier than the other, so the second one, the later one, actually corrects the first one, so it cancels the ruling of the first one. Now, last thing is that sometimes all these ulama rely on the same hadith, on the very same hadith, but they understand it differently. And I give you one very important example for us to understand these days. The hadith in which Rasulullah has said, لا طلاق ولا عتاق في إغلاق. لا طلاق ولا عتاق في إغلاق. Talaq is divorce. Itaq is to free a slave. And إغلاق is when someone is closed. That's what we call it, the immediate translation. So if someone is closed, then his talaq is no more valid. So some of the ulama have understood this ighlaq, the word ighlaq, as being so angry. When someone is so angry, he may reach to a state when he no more understands what he says, right? Did you hear that? I actually have many people who come to me with this type of situation. And I still remember one brother from Ottawa. He came to me and he was about 75 years old. And he said, Sheikh, I did divorce my wife and this was the third time. And I don't know what to do now. So I asked his wife to come and we sat together. And then after talking to them, I realized that this person unfortunately has some type of mental issue where he sometimes goes so angry to the extent that he would start uttering things that he doesn't know. And I asked him, did you mean to say I divorce you? He said, Wallahi, I didn't even know about it, but my wife told me you said it. You see the point? Like sometimes it happens. Like a person gets so angry to the point that he become like a drunk, like almost he is unconscious. And subhanAllah, at that time I asked Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala, and he said this is the type of ighlaq that doesn't really count as talaq. SubhanAllah, when I told him about the opinion of Ibn Uthaymeen, I still remember that this person, he came to kiss my hand. I said, I don't have nothing to do with it. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, and Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us that if you do not mean to say the word talaq, and it just happened because of something that is out of your capacity, out of your control, then it doesn't take the same ruling like someone who really means it. But some other ulama have understood the word ighlaq in different way. So they said ighlaq is actually when someone is forced to do it. Like say, for example, and that this has happened. Like if you read through the history, there were some khalifas or some rulers like very bad rulers who would walk in the market street and when they see a beautiful lady with her husband, they will go to their husband and they will say, you must divorce her because they want that lady. That has happened in the history. And if a person is put into force to say the word divorce to his wife, or otherwise he will lose his life, in Islam, I mean, yeah, he could say it, but I mean, save your life at least. But does that mean that the divorce has happened? No. Even if he said it, because he was actually forced to do it, and that could apply to the word ighlaq, and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes it's the same hadith, the same words, but the ulama gets different understanding of the same wording, right? And that actually makes this fiqh very rich. And in fact, when you look at the opinions of the ulama, you see so many angles to the same hadith, to the same resource, the Quran and the Sunnah, which makes you always happy to see, to understand it from a different perspective. Any question? Any question? Yes?
Those that we say this form must have the research ability of those at that time, the research ability now is different. So therefore, it's a tendency that, for instance, like Al-Azhar, somebody will want to do this, Al-Azhar, the institution is so advanced these days. So most of the time, their decisions will go contrary to any of the 4 imams. So
they don't go by the 4 imams, you mean?
Huh?
They don't follow the 4 imams?
No, when they say their research base, they took the 4 imams as a base. The research have advanced. The research have advanced. So there's a tendency that some people believe that they might go against it. So therefore they will say, oh, we follow the Sunnah.
Like they are better.
They said, well, that's what they told us. But these were the ones that taught us, our prophets, came from Al-Azhar.
Yeah. Yeah.
When anybody asks you about the Muslim, tell them that everything is Sunnah.
Okay, so I want to stay away from this word that I follow the Quran and Sunnah and not the madhab. This is actually not nonsense. This is nonsense, truly nonsense. Because you cannot just open the book of hadith and say, well, I understand it and I follow it. You have to understand the hadith by the mind of a scholar who really deeply can understand Arabic and understand the conflict between a hadith and can tell you exactly the context of this hadith in the history of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So people who nowadays say, we follow the Quran and Sunnah, we don't follow madahib. This is nonsense. This is stupid. And I tell you from Sheikh Ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala, like Sheikh Ibn Baz, I got the privilege to study after him for several years. I used to attend just in front of him. Sheikh Ibn Baz was Hanbali. His madhab was Hanbali. But he would go beyond the madhab. And his statement is always like, we should give more preference to the Quran and Sunnah than the opinion of the 4 imams if we have a stronger opinion of another imam. Meaning, in the Hanbali madhab, for example, I give you very, very great example. You know, in madhab Imam Ahmad, your, what do we call this here, thigh? So your thigh in Ahmad ibn Hanbal madhab is not awrah. Did you know that? Huh? You know why? You know why? Because there is a hadith in which Rasulullah was sitting with his companion and he was exposing his thigh. His thigh is this side, is this part, like above the knee by maybe one, what do you call this? One what? Whatever, this size. So this not here. This is by all ulama it's haram, it's awra. But here, this part, according to Ahmad bin Hanbal, is not awra. So the hadith says that Rasulullah was sitting with Abu Bakr and Umar and some other companions, and he was exposing this side from here to here. And when Uthman came to join them, he covered it up. So they told him, Ya Rasulullah, why are you doing this? He said, Ala astahi min rajulin tastahi minhu al-malaika. Shouldn't I feel shy from a person whom the malaika feel shy from? Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu arda. This is a true authentic hadith. But then there's another hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari that says explicitly, al-fakhidu awra. That thigh is awra. Like it's explicit. It's in Sahih al-Bukhari. By the way, both of the hadith are in Sahih al-Bukhari. The hadith of Uthman and this hadith. So what I'm trying to say that in the time of Shaykh ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala, he knew that Ahmad ibn Hanbal says that this is awra. It's not awra, I'm sorry. It's not awra. But when he was asked, he would say it is awra. He will not follow Ahmad ibn Hanbal on this particular issue. He would follow Imam Abu Hanifa, Malik, and Shafi. And he would say that it is ahwat. Ahwat means that it actually protects you from being in the wrong spot, right? It actually, you will be in the safe side anyway. So that was his fatwa, rahimahullah ta'ala. And the reason I'm saying this is that if someone tells me, I follow Quran and Sunnah, well, okay, the Sunnah tells you in Sahih al-Bukhari, in one case that your thigh is awra, and in another case that your thigh is not awra. So how would you follow the Sunnah? You can't. You must understand the meaning of it. You must understand what the ulama, the big ulama have said about it. So those people nowadays who just claim no more madahib, don't follow madahib, those are actually sabotaging the knowledge that we inherited from our scholars. We can't do this. And unfortunately, they say that we follow our pious predecessors. Well, who will be our pious predecessors other than those four imams and the people like them? So I want to make it very clear that we are pro-madahib, but at the same time, we are pro the authentic madhab, not what nowadays people are talking about madhab. Like nowadays, people are being very fanatic about their madhab. They tell you, you must do it this way or it is haram. And then if you ask them, like, where did you come up with this? He say, my sheikh said so. And my sheikh said so. And you go to their books and you find that it has nothing to do with the madhab that they follow. How many times I was in discussion with people who claim that they follow madhab Abu Hanifa, and they didn't know about madhab Abu Hanifa. All what they know was about some fatwa that they have heard from one of their mashayikh in one single city that they have lived next to. That's all. It has nothing to do with Abu Hanifa or even the students of Abu Hanifa. Same thing applies to Maliki and Shafi and Ahmad bin Hanbal. I hope this is clear now, inshallah. And I will have to repeat this over and over because it always comes and always people say, well, in order to be Salafi, you have to stay away from madahib. That's absolutely not true. You know, who is one of the greatest imams of Salafism? Ibn Taymiyyah. What? Wasn't he? And what was the madhab of Abu Ibn Taymiyyah? He was Hanbali. He was Hanbali. We must know that. He was Hanbali. And another big Salafi imam was Imam Ibn Kathir, the one who authored the tafsir. And he was Shafi'i. He was Shafi'i. One of the greatest Salafi imam was Ibn Abdul Barr. And Ibn Abdul Barr was Maliki. And the same thing with Imam, the one who authored or who explained the Tahawiyya. He was Hanafi. He was one of the greatest Salafi Imams. So we when we talk about following our pious predecessors, we're not really crossing over those madahib. What we're saying is that we want to go back to the roots of these madahib, and we want to understand what they have said and where they came from. And at any point in time, it appears to us that in certain mas'ala, that there is another strong opinion of another imam that is closer to the sunnah, then maybe I can take that. Just like how I told you, like Sheikh Ibn Baz, rahimahullah, who was my primary sheikh, he used to say that your fakhid is awra, even though in the Hanbali madhab, it is not awra. Okay. Yes? You what?
I was praying and I was saying, he said, I don't know what the answer is or what you've been talking about. But you said following the Sunnah and the Quran is nonsense.
It's nonsense? No.
I don't know what I have.
No, Habibi, you didn't hear it well. No, Habibi, if I say this, you you will kick me out from here, inshallah.
I know, okay.
This is the last thing you want to hear from him. Habibi, if you may hear me very well, inshallah, what I have said is that as someone who is not yet mujtahid, like someone who has just started to become a student of knowledge, he cannot go to the books of Sunnah and read through them and come up with a ruling. That's nonsense. Why? Because we can tell him definitely that he will misinterpret what he read. A person who is qualified, or in order for a person to be qualified to derive ruling from Quran and Sunnah, should be as good and knowledgeable as Imam Abu Hanifa or Malik or Shafi'i or Ahmad bin Hanbal, or at least their students or the grand students. But not anyone who just claim that he have memorized some ahadith and started to say this. And I want to tell you one thing. Did you hear about Imam al-Albani rahimahullah? Imam al-Albani, I never met with Imam al-Albani rahmatullah alayhi, but I consider him as one of the greatest imam of his time. Rahmatullah alayhi, he passed away. He's from Damascus, the same city where I came from. Imam al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala has many people who love him and many people who said that we are his students. So there was one person that I know, maybe about 10 years older than me. He came once to some of the ulama in Saudi Arabia, and he said, I'm a student of Sheikh al-Albani. And he was proud of it, and he was like, I'm well known, I have books. So one of the ulama in Saudi Arabia, his name is Bakr Abu Zayd, rahmatullah alayhi, passed away. He asked him, he said, okay, let me ask you one question. Did you read all the 9 books of hadith from in front of Imam al-Albani? You know what the 9 books? Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Al-Muwatta, Musnad Ahmad, Ad-Darimi. Those are the 9 books. I just mentioned that Musnad Imam Ahmad alone is over 11,000 hadith, let alone all the other books. So he asked him, did you read all the 9 books in front of Imam al-Albani so that you are saying, I am a student of Sheikh al-Albani? He said, no. He said, okay. Did you read only the 6 books, like a subset? He said, no. He said, okay, how about only Sahih Bukhari and Muslim? He said, no. He said, okay, Riyadh al-Salihin? He said, no. He said, then how do you claim you are a student of Sheikh al-Albani? Like many people nowadays say, well, we are this and that, and we have learned, and we can tell the rulings from the hadith. Well, if you haven't learned the hadith from the great ulama, You can't really take, make your own rulings or take the hadith with whatever you're understanding and put a ruling from, and then tell people, well, you must follow Quran and Sunnah and not the madhab. I'm saying this, and you might hear me repeating that over and over, because in today's time, we have two extremes. We have one extreme who says we must be following a madhab. And unfortunately, they don't mean the true madhab of, for example, Imam Malik. No, they mean some sheikh who claims he follow Imam Malik, and they stick themselves to everything that this person says without even verifying that he follows any way Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. Like I can tell you, I'm Maliki. And then I had never studied madhab Imam Malik. And then people will say, well, we are Maliki because we follow this sheikh. Well, you can't be Maliki for following a sheikh who you don't know if he truly is Maliki, right? So that's one extreme. The other extreme is for those who say, you can't be blind followers of madhab, you can't be just, you can't stick yourself to a madhab, you should be just taking it directly from Quran and Sunnah. That's nonsense. Quran and Sunnah requires great knowledge and intellect to understand them, to interpret them, to put them in context, to put the right understanding to them. You can't just read a hadith and think that you are able to make the ruling of it. We just said la talaqa wa la itaqa fi ighlaq. How could a person who doesn't even know Arabic very well to read la talaqa wa la itaqa fi ighlaq and come up with the ruling? How could a person do this? And it's in Sahih. It's in the Sahih. How could a person deduce the ruling of covering the thigh, whether it is awra or not awra, despite the fact that there are two authentic hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, one says it is awra and one says it's not awra? If you only will read through the books of Sunnah and try to get the ruling, you will never be able to do this. In fact, you will do more mistakes than you could imagine. And that's why I always say, well, we must follow the Quran and Sunnah according to our pious predecessors. And the most reliable pious predecessors in teaching us Quran and Sunnah are the four Imams. That's how we should understand it. So the four Imams are the ones who have worked their best to teach us what Quran and Sunnah say. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are always correct. And at the time when the person becomes more knowledgeable, at that point in time, he may take some masail, some issues and some rulings from other madahib just because he thinks that the other imams might be closer to the hadith than his own imam. And that's what we call it, follow the sunnah over, or give more preference to the sunnah over the statement of your own imam. Only at the case if there is another prominent imam who will say something else based on the sunnah, and you do believe that it is closer to the sunnah than your own imam. At that point in time, yes, this makes sense. But not that I still remember there's a sheikh called Sheikh Muhammad I forget his last name, but he was among the Imams of Al-Haram al-Nabawi. He used to teach in Al-Haram al-Nabawi. And this Imam was Maliki, he's Egyptian. So he was teaching the madhab of Imam Malik, Al-Muwatta. The book of Al-Muwatta, we know that. Al-Muwatta is actually, by the way, did anyone doesn't know what Muwatta is? Anyone doesn't know Muwatta? Everyone knows Muwatta? Anyone can tell me how Muwatta is different from other books of hadith? The reason Al-Muwatta was called Al-Muwatta, which is very different from like Sahih al-Bukhari or Muslim or Musnad Imam Ahmad or Sunan al-Dawud or Tirmidhi. The reason it's called Muwatta is because this is a very unique type of books that combines between hadith and fiqh. in the same text, in the same book. That was the very first person who did this was Imam Malik, radiallahu anhu arda. And his book was called Al-Muwatta. And there were many other Muwatta, like other similar books that were called Muwatta afterwards, just because they combined between Sunnah, the Hadith and the Fiqh. So this Imam in the Medina, he was teaching about Al-Muwatta, and then like a paper like this with a question came to him, and it says, how come you said this? There is a hadith that says something else, and Imam Malik was just a man and we are men. So the Imam was like, okay, you're not like the Imam. You are like the donkey of the Imam. So you can't, your knowledge is not even close to any of his grand students, let alone him. And how could you dare to talk about the Imam in this way? Okay, any question? Did I make it clear, brother? Are you in line? Are we aligned? Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah. Otherwise, I'll be in big trouble. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I think, Jazakallah khairan for the clarifications. I think what we're getting wrong is this. In the hadith of the Prophet says, خير أمتي قرني.
Yeah.
ثم الذين يلونهم.
Yes.
ثم الذين يلونهم.
Yes.
We bring this principle into our life, our careers, but we don't bring it to Islam.
But we don't?
We don't bring it to Islam,
Uh-huh.
to our deen. It's never possible that somebody in 2022 will understand anything in the deen than somebody who met the Prophet, or than somebody who met the Prophet, or than somebody who met the Prophet. This is what the Prophet said. This is what Imam Malik says several times. This is what all the Imam says several times. What people get wrong is this. When the Imam have this integrity of saying that we study the deen, but we are not saying follow us blindly. People take them for an ordinary person. And I think it's very important that, sir, anytime you talk about these scholars, you must remind us to say rahimahullah to them, to pray. Anyone who doesn't pray for this Imam, I think is jettisoning his deen.
Allah Izzik al-Khair. Barakallah feek.
Imam Ahmed bin Abadi says something in his book. He says, As-sunnatu indana at-tamathuk ma kana alayhi ashabu rasul.
Allah.
So when people ask him, he's saying that, what do we know? They know. How is it that we come now and then we say Imam Ahmed don't know? Imam Malik doesn't know. And all this.
Exactly. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah feek. That's so excellent. Barakallah feekum. In not this Friday, but the last Friday, I mentioned what Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal has said about Shafi'i. His son Abdullah has asked him, oh my dad, I hear you always praying or doing a prayer or dua to Imam Shafi'i. So who was Imam Shafi'i? It's been years and years, and you always mention him in your dua. And he said, Ya bunay, laqad kana Shafi'i كالعافية للبدن وكالشمس للدنيا فهل ترى لهذين من بد. Oh my son, the Imam Shafi'i was like a cure to my body, to all humans, and it was like the sun for this universe. Can you think that we can live without him, without these? And then he said, Wallahi ما عرفنا الله إلا بالشافعي. We have never realized who Allah, like the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on us, except after we learned from Imam Shafi'i. He was the one who taught us. And that actually tells us one thing very important, which is the knowledge of Sharia cannot be thought about just like how we can learn computer science or medicine you can always go to the books and make yourself the expert, the subject matter expert in mathematics or in physics or whatever. You can learn it. You can take it by yourself. The knowledge of Sharia is a divine knowledge. And it has to get its barakah through the people who narrated. That's why when it came through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then it was inherited to the Sahaba, and from the Sahaba to the Tabi'een, and then to the Imams and so on. That's where the barakah came from. And if we isolate this knowledge from the sources, then the knowledge is no more the divine knowledge. It becomes just like physics or chemistry or mathematics or anything else. And I can tell you, wallahi, wallahi, wallahi. You know, did you hear about those Orientalists? I have met many professors here in the United States, at Georgetown University, at Harvard University, non-Muslim, and they know more about Islam than many of our scholars these days. The knowledge they have about Islam is worthless because it didn't change them. It didn't make them good. It didn't make them believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it's worthless. So knowledge, if it is isolated from the divine nature of it, then it becomes useless. And unfortunately, what we hear nowadays, people who claim, oh, I have memorized this ahadith and I can say a ruling and whatnot, unfortunately, they are just following that. I know we are almost there. I just want to say one thing, inshallah, just to get you the feeling of it. When we start, inshallah, next time we will be talking about the rulings of miyah. Miyah means water that you use for your tahara, right? And what miyah, what are the type of water that you can use for tahara and what you cannot use. So I want to just say one ruling, and I will conclude, inshallah. If the water is in its natural form, like for example the water of rain, like the ocean, like the lake, like water well, it's still in its natural form, that its color is transparent, no smell, and it didn't change, like physically it didn't change. We call this ma, just ma, and the ruling of it is that it is tahur, meaning that you can always use it for wudu, you can use it for tahara, and there is no difference of opinion between scholars about this. They all agreed that any water that remains in its natural form without changing its color or its smell or its shape, then it is tahur, something that you can always use to make tahara, to make wudu, and to remove any najasa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has, as we mentioned in the hadith that we have started with, that he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, O Allah, نقني من الذنوب والخطايا كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس. And the hadith also says about بالماء والثلج والبرد, that purify me with the water and with the natural water, which also comes from snow, might come from snow, or it might come from like rain. And the one ruling I want to mention is that if that water has changed because it touched something, right? Then what is the ruling about it? Give you a very, very quick example. Like say you have a bucket of water and your son brought ink and he dropped the inks on that water and it became blue. Can you still make wudu with that? So that's what we call water that is no more on its original shape, on its natural original shape, right? That type of water, in fact, has more than one opinion about it, whether you can make tahara with it or not. Inshallah, we will talk more about it, inshallah, next time. But I just wanted you to get a feeling of where we are heading, inshallah. We want to talk about the water that is permissible for you to use for tahara, and then we will be talking about what najasa is, like what makes it, like what is it considered as najasa. For example, if your cat comes and drink from this bucket of water and leaves, can you still make wudu from it? What if you have, what if there was a bird eating from it, or drinking from it, or what if there was all of a sudden, like for example, you have a bucket of water that you have placed in front of your door, and the neighbors had their own dog, and this dog came and drank from that water. Can you still make wudu from it? So those are things that we will be learning, inshallah. And then, of course, what could be najasa? Like if a cat, for example, urinated on your thobe, is that najasa or not najasa? Or if you go to do your udhiyah, inshallah, if the blood of that sheep comes on your thobe, is that najasa or not najasa? I know you will go there, inshallah. If you by mistake touch like the dirts of those animals, is that najasa or not najasa? Do you have to wash it or not? And on some of these, we will be going through, like in some of these, we will be going through what we call an ijma', like a unanimous agreement between the ulama. Just like how I said, if the water it remains on its natural form, then by unanimous agreement between all scholars, it is what we call a tahur. It's a water that we can use for wudu and for ghusl and to remove najasa. But there are other times where there is difference of opinion. I am not here to follow one madhab in front of you. I mean, I probably might follow something for myself or my family, but what I try to do here is to give you a sense of what is there and to understand like where the ulama are coming from. And of course, if you need some recommendation, we can talk about that. But I'm not here to impose any opinion or any school of thought on the people, inshallah. So I want you to understand, I'm not teaching here any specific madhab. I'm trying to teach the general form of fiqh and try to touch, not really go deep into the difference of opinions between the ulama, and show you how rich fiqh became because of those scholars, inshallah. So I hope that makes it a good experience in your first time, and I hope, inshallah, next time we'll see you more. And please tell your friends and family about this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us all together to love Allah, to love His Messenger, and to love all those pious predecessors that we are all proud to be their followers. Jazakumullah khair. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.